pre-show. Right, you good to go?
I don't know, I guess so. Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. First item up for today. Quick PSA, folks. Some of you will have noticed that there wasn't a podcast last month. That's because I'm rubbish at writing scripts on time, and the video was delayed. So, ergo, the podcast was delayed, which wasn't great. And I'd rather that doesn't happen a lot because I really enjoyed these podcast recordings and hanging out with Bill and talking to you and all that sort of jazz. So I think what we're going to do going forward is we're just going to record like first Sunday of every month, regardless of whether or not I have a video out. I think that's better than waiting until a delayed video comes out to record. It's just more structured, and that means you guys are getting consistent content, etc. I think that's what we're going to do going forward.
Cool.
Yep. I think it makes sense. So I wonder would there be anyone in chat being like, no, please record less. We want less of you, please.
We barely stand you as is. More content would just turn us off entirely.
Exactly. We'll see a drop in patronage and views and the whole shebang after this. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I've just a couple of quick short shout outs to stuff that's happened over the past 2 months. Number one, I for anyone who's interested, I did an interview with Worldbuilding Magazine. They talked to me about world building and being like a world building YouTuber. I'll leave links in the show notes if anyone wants to go check it out. In general, Worldbuilding Magazine, it's a free like web publication. I think it's free anyways. As far as I know, it's free. It's a free web publication, and it's really good quality, like slick production. The visual design is great, and I had a blast doing it, and they were lovely to me. So go check them out, show some support, and if they have a Patreon or something like that, go consider chucking them a couple of bucks because they do good things. So yeah, Worldbuilding Magazine, and thank you. I think it was Adam, if I recall correctly, because it's been like now 2 months since I talked to him, but I think it was Adam who conducted the interview with me. So shout out to Adam and shout out to Worldbuilding Magazine. You all were great. I had a blast. Links in the show notes. So that's the first thing. The other thing is John Lang, who's been mentioned on the show a couple times before. Again, about a month or two ago. OG fan. A month or two ago, they created a new subreddit called Celtic Linguistics. Obviously, this is going to get a mention on this show.
Nice.
It's a subject near and dear to both our hearts. So again, links in the show notes. Go check out Celtic Linguistics. And as with many new subreddits, a lot of them kind of like tend to be DOA, as in they get created and then they just kind of fade a little bit. So if you're in any way interested in linguistics, which I assume you are, and Celtic Linguistics, which why aren't you, go check out Celtic Linguistics subreddit. Shout out John Lang. It's a really cool idea.
Great. Yeah, that's class. I will actually hold on. I'm going to sub to that immediately. 1 second.
There you go. Look at Bill. Bill doing God's work over here.
I have to log in. Okay, hold on. It won't be quite as immediate. Give me 1 second. Join. There we go.
Woo! Real quick, without getting into a big talk about it, how are you finding the Reddit redesign now that it's kind of not really new anymore? It's been around for a while.
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
No.
Interesting. I had to go do some web archive stuff recently, and I went back to an older version of Reddit, like in the Wayback Machine, and I was like, wow, I have my qualms with the new Reddit, but by God, the old Reddit looked awful. It's weird, like looking back at it, you're kind of like, this looks like how the old internet looked, like back in the day. Yeah. It was just, it was, I think it's very strange. I think overall it's been relatively positive, I think.
I think I could see how this is a more slick design and how the old design wasn't like very aesthetically pleasing, but it was easy to use. It was a usable interface, whereas now I think things are in unintuitive places, and like they've changed the way stuff works now, that you click into a thread and it doesn't really open the thread, it just kind of shows you the thread, and then you have to click in again to actually get into it, and it's even worse on mobile. I think it has put barriers against my use.
Well, I think I remember. Here's us now talking about Reddit. God damn it, Edgar. I think the one of the big problems I had with it back in the day was its search function was awful.
Yeah, that's still pretty bad.
Well, I think they've improved it somewhat, because I remember there's loads of times where I tried to search things and I just couldn't. Like, I could not find what I'm looking for. And now, like, you have to do a little bit of like extra clicking to be like, no, I actually want you to search all of Reddit, or I just want you to search this subreddit or whatever. But like in general, it seems to return what I'm expecting, whereas that was not consistent before. So I think that's a slight improvement. And I also think the back end stuff is a bit of an improvement. And the uploading of content is a little bit neater, I think. That bit they've definitely improved. Which makes sense, because I'd be like, content is king, and the more they can make it, the easier they can make it for people to make content and put content on a site, the more traffic, Whereas before it was a bit kind of you needed to be a bit of a geek to like a computer geek to make it happen. In particular, the UI stuff was just that was head wrecking back in the day. So yeah, it has its problems, but it certainly makes the old Reddit look old as hell, crazy old.
Anyway. I've no objection to things that are just old, like, as long as they're functional.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. Anyhow, so that was a point 2 of quick shoutouts. Third and final quick shoutout goes to I'm going to mispronounce this. I'm sorry, Jasper Charlet, I think. They are a 23-year-old bassoonist, I believe, is their bassoonist and composer. And they are into composition, and they're into conlanging. And they went ahead and created their first opera, an opera called Hera, which is written in their own conlang, a PIE-derived conlang. And I feel kind of bad that I'm bringing them up now, because they were running a campaign on Indiegogo, and they hit me up on Discord and were like, hey, would you be interested in publicizing this? And I was like, God, I'd love to, but we actually don't have a recording, like a podcast recording scheduled for ages, so I fear that your fundraiser is going to run out by the time we record. Which it has done, but I'm still going to give them a shout out, and I still would encourage people to go to Indiegogo and have a look at the media that's there, and there's also links to the documentation of the conlang that you can check out. It's like really thorough, it's really good, and from the little bits I've heard of the opera, it seems quality.
Cool.
Because, like, not to be harsh to people who watch Artifexian, but I do get a lot of emails from, it's probably from kids, to be fair, but they're like, I'm creating this project, and they leave a link or whatever, and it's kind of not the best project in the world. And so when Jasper reached out to me, I was kind of like, oh, kind of here we go again. It's another kind of 14-year-old who thinks that they've written the next Game of Thrones or whatever. And then I started listening to stuff, and I was like, oh no, you're like a serious composer, and you're also a serious conlanger. This is actually a serious work of art. And they managed to raise like $5,000 or something to get the thing up and off the ground. So yeah, check them out, and I'm sure they're going to go back to Indiegogo for more funding at some stage. And follow them on Twitter or whatever, and support where you can, because this is dope. Like, new music, conlanging, great. Like, what more could you want?
That ticks multiple of our shared interests.
It definitely does, and particularly mine, because like I've written a not so good opera or operetta, and I've also done conlang. So I'm kind of like, it was this weird thing of being like, oh look, it's like another Edgar. You and I are like almost identical in our sort of artistic passions. So yeah,
it was pretty good, man.
It was all right. As with everything, man. Like, the minute I'm finished making a thing, like during the making of a thing, I think it's the greatest thing I've ever done. And then the minute it's finished, I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever done, and I'm ashamed that it's out there. Yeah, it was good. It was fine. It was good. But yeah, it wasn't anything revolutionary, and certainly wasn't as good as a lot of stuff my peers were doing. Like that one chap we know who continuously churns out amazing music, like a production line. And like, how does he do that? But he just keeps doing it. Oh, I'm assuming you know who you're on by, yeah? Go on,
I have an idea.
yeah. But anyway, so those were shout outs to Worldbuilding Magazine, Celtic Linguistics subreddit, and Hera, the PIE Conlang opera. Go check out the links and support all the folks where necessary. They're doing good things. And then so the final thing is sort of like pre-show stuff I'd like to cover. Is we are going to review Axiom's End at the end of the show, which is usually where we do Bank of Artifexia, but we can't put it there this episode for obvious reasons. So let's do a bit of Bank of Artifexia now, Bill.
Let's.
So before we get into this, I have a confession to make. I actually don't know. Because as I get stuff in the mail, folks, I make little notes to just be like, I just write like Bank of Artifexia to remind myself you have to top up Bank of Artifexia this month. But this month, or over the past 2 months, I realized I need to be more specific because I knew that there was Bank of Artifexia to be talked about. And then yesterday I went to gather up the mail I'd received. And it occurs to me, I actually don't know who I need to talk about here. And I'm very confused as to what I referred to when I wrote Bank of Artifexia in my notes. After like a good deal of like detective work trying to figure out who I have or haven't talked about, I think I've come across the person that I was originally referring to, but there is a non-zero chance that this is going to be a verbatim regurgitation of a previous Bank of Artifexia. And there's kind of very little I can do about it. So apologies in advance.
I'm fairly sure this we haven't done this one.
Yeah, so am I, but I can't. And the reason why I'm not 100% certain is because everyone sends the mail through the PO box.
Yeah.
There's like a massive delay, so lots of people be like, they'll date their letter like March, for example, and I don't get it until like June, so it's like literal months later. So if I don't immediately talk about it and I put it in my little box of Artifexian fan mail, it becomes kind of just mixed up with everything, and you're like, I have no chronology to go on here. So I'm hoping this is okay, and I'm hoping that there's not someone listening going like, oh my god, this is great, they're going to top up my entry, and then we just completely miss it. So I'm sorry, but anyways, hopefully this is it. It comes from Samuel de Barbara.
Ah, yes.
Who has written in before, and it was gas before I even read like who wrote this thing. I was like, this is that person who does the fancy handwriting, because their message is written in calligraphy, beautiful handwriting, and I was like, that's that person. I looked down, I was like, yes, it's Samuel. So Samuel sends a 1,000 Costa Rican, what's it called, colons.
Cologne.
I don't want to say colon. That's gonna be.
Well, there's an accent on the second vowel there, so colon maybe.
Well, sure, I don't know what that accent does at all.
Is it just not? Is that not just stress in Spanish? Stress.
I don't know my Spanish.
Very Irish there.
I know very little about Spanish. And Spanish, I think you could be right, but yeah.
Cologne, I'm looking at Wiktionary here, so it's definitely stressing the second syllable.
Can I just call it like Köln and then just like go halfway there?
I will trade you 1,000 of this German city.
Yeah, exactly. I that blew my mind as a
Cologne,
kid when I was like, Cologne is actually Köln, and I was like, that's mad, because usually most place names are just kind of like the place name but mangled into the foreign country's phonology. But I was like, oh no, this is like y'all have just tacked on a whole bunch of letters that just aren't even there. Like where did the GNE come from, man? Like, that's ridiculous. It's spelled K-O-L-M, and then we go C-O-L-G-N-E. You're like, what?
C-O-L-O-G-N-E.
Like, what? What is that? Who does that? That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Köln. It's not hard. Just call it Köln. So anyway. So that's 1,000 Costa Rican Cologne.
It's the same as how the city is named in English.
Cologne. Cool.
Cologne, yeah.
Cologne. Brilliant.
As well, according to looking at the name of the city on Wikipedia and the name of the currency on Wiktionary, the IPA for them is the same. So.
Cool. So what we have here, links in the show notes to check out the notes. We have a color scheme. I find this note interesting because Colors first off. The red and green mix. Like, I never like anything that's red and green mixed. I think they don't work as colors, even though they're complementary colors. I just think
Portugal has left the chat.
Portugal has left the chat, and I don't think Portugal works either. Nor do I think Morocco works. Jesus, the Moroccan flag is just... It's such a car crash build, the Moroccan flag with those colours. Oh, it's so bad. But I find them just... they either look like kind of... Sorry, Costa Rica. They either look like kind of garish Christmassy colours, or they make my head hurt because they like clash with each other. So I saw this and I was like, ugh, green and red everywhere. That's nuts. And the one of the things that made me laugh when I saw this was that there's a deer on it, and we had that show with deer with antlers.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh look, it's a deer with antlers.
Banknotes with antlers.
Exactly. Banknote with antlers. So that made me laugh. And then the bloke at the end, for anyone who cares about this, the bloke on the obverse or whatever it's called, or reverse probably would be, is Braulio Carrillo Colina, and he was knocking around from 1840 to 1842. He seems like a complicated chap from the little bit of reading I did on Wikipedia. He seems to have a couple of kind of like he was a statesman. I think he was the president at some stage, or whatever, the de facto leader of Costa Rica. He seemed to have done a lot of really good things in terms of making Costa Rica, improving Costa Rica's position in the world. But he seems to also have a massive authoritarian slant to him. Like, according to Wikipedia, he made laws that effectively made him like a leader for life. Sort of jazz. So it was an interesting Wikipedia read. I was kind of like, oh, that's good man. And I was like, that's not so good. No, we don't like that. That's all right. It's like, no. So it seems like he's a complicated individual. Sorry to any Costa Ricans listening. I get the impression that you have various streets named after him, things. So I don't know if he's seen as a good character in your culture or not. But just from my impressions, from my ignorant foreigner impressions, I thought he was it was a mixed individual, which, to be fair, that's just humans. Humans are mixed anyways. And then finally, that is 1,000 Costa Rica colones are 161 USD, 116 Great British pounds, and 136 euros. And yeah, that's that. Thank you, Samuel.
Neat.
And I don't think Samuel actually... I'm sorry about the... Oh, ASMR. I don't think Samuel actually had any sort of questions. I think, yeah, they tell the story of how they became to get this note. And again, I just want to stress to people, like, please don't be sending like actual treasured memories to me, because like Samuel writes here that like the note came from a friend who got it from relatives or whatever, and I'm just kind of like, that should be something you should perhaps hold on to and not send it to me. So I'm very, very grateful. But again, I want to stress to people, just send me your kind of like trash change from when you go on a holiday somewhere. Please don't send something that's of sentimental value to you. So yeah, Bank of Artifexia. Done.
Bank of Artifexia.
Samuel, thank you so much. That's really cool. And your handwriting is baller. It's just it's anachronistic in a sort of cool way. Like, I receive your letter and I'm like, it's like reading a document from like over 100 years ago, and there's this class feeling to it. So it's really, really dope. But that's all for pre-show, Bill. Should we do some follow-up?
Yeah, we could do some follow-up. So, first point in follow-up is actually something you asked me to bring up.
I don't remember asking you to bring this up, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Well, it's in cold, hard text on Reddit. Okay. We were talking the last episode about The Last Kingdom, I think, and how you found it strange the characters using RP, speaking with RP accents.
Which it is strange. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I agree. But that was what you're bringing up.
Sure.
And I think I didn't think to say when we were talking about it last week, but it occurred to me afterwards. And I think I've had a lot of thoughts about the depictions in it. Is Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which it's the most recent Assassin's Creed game. It came out last November. And the premise of it is that you're a Norwegian who settles in England in the mid 800s, thereabouts.
Also, kind of around the time of the Last Kingdom.
Yeah, I think it's set slightly before.
Yeah, I think it's slightly earlier, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember reading the premise of Last Kingdom, and the stuff with the Great Dane Army happens in the backstory of the main character, and this is like AC Valhalla happens just afterwards, like a couple of years later. But roughly it's the same kind of period.
Yeah.
And the way that they handle this kind of language thing is quite interesting. When you speak to NPCs, when you're actually like having dialogue as the main character with NPCs, it's always in English. And the accents are kind of appropriate to where the NPC is from. So the Norwegians will speak with Norwegian accents, or at least I don't know enough about Norwegian accents speaking English, but that's how they come across to me. Mm-hmm. When you're in England, the Anglo-Saxons will speak with English accents, modern accents that are kind of appropriate to region and class. So it's not like historically accurate, but it's not giving everyone RP either.
Cool. So I'm assuming there's like Cockney and all that stuff in there.
I can't remember. London is actually London is featured, but it's it's a reasonably small. Can't remember whether there's Cockney.
But that's dope. I like the not whitewashing with RP.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then like in you meet Welsh characters and Scottish. Well, you meet Pictish characters who speak with Scottish accents, and one of the DLCs is set in Ireland, and the accents aren't dreadful, which they usually are in anything depicting Ireland in anything.
I don't. Sorry, Bill, to cut across there. I don't understand why it's so difficult to get an Irish accent right. Like, just hire an Irish person. Yeah,
I can think of about 6 million people who can do it really well.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you hear dialogue in the background, it is in the relevant languages. So when you're just walking around England, if you like pass people on the street, they'll be speaking in Anglo-Saxon, or you'll hear people in the background, or if you're fighting Welsh, the soldiers will call to each other in Welsh, and Old Irish when you're in Ireland, or possibly some of it might be Modern Irish.
I would imagine some of it's Modern Irish. But that's a nice balance. It reminds me, I could be wrong, but it sounds something similar to what the Age of Empire games did, I think. Because I remember thinking way back when I played like Age of Empires 2 or whatever, I remember, when conversing with a character, like if you're talking to Joan of Arc will speak in English, but with a French accent to you. Mm-hmm. But then during the actual campaign, the sort of sound bites that the background characters would make as they attack or whatever would be it's either in gibberish or it's in the appropriate language. Mm-hmm. I think it sounds something similar to Age of Empires. That's a nice balance, I think. Yeah,
and I'm fairly sure that they are using the appropriate languages here, because not exactly, because when you're fighting the Picts, I'm pretty sure they're speaking in Scots Gaelic, which obviously they wouldn't be. They would speak Pictish, but they're still the Scottish characters, sure. And I could understand little bits of what they were saying because it's similar to Irish.
Could you understand the Irish people?
I didn't play enough of the Irish DLC to hear enough of the background speech to decide.
Yeah, I wonder if, just on the accent thing one more time, I wonder if there's something about the way we talk that's just maybe particularly hard to mimic, because like every person who goes to do an Irish accent, it never works really in a way that I don't hear. Like when people do English accents, they usually pull it off fairly well. Like people can like fairly easy mimic like a Liverpool accent, or Cockney accents. I see people not having problems with. West Country, cool. Like people tend to nail it. Up near Geordie accents, like that, they all work. I can see Americans doing those accents, and still getting it right. But then the minute they try Ireland, it falls to pieces.
Well, maybe we just don't notice how bad they are, because they're not native to us in the same way.
I would agree with that, but I think, at least in this house anyways, there is enough English media going on.
That's my next point, yeah.
That I think I still have a fairly good gauge. Like, again, a football. I watch English football all the time, so I'm constantly, listening to English people talk in their accent. So I think I have a fairly okay gauge. If I hear someone do a Geordie accent, I think I can be like, yeah, that sounds like the Geordie footballers. Cool. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
And well, yeah, I think that kind of leads into the next point I was going to make, which is that everyone gets American media, so everyone is very familiar with American accents. And even in the States, they get a lot of British and English media, so they're reasonably familiar with British and English accents. People in the UK and the States don't get a lot of Irish media, so their understandings of Irish accents are based on previous bad imitations.
Yeah, but that's entirely fair, and that's what's occurring for sure. But you'd think that if you were going to make a game where you need to feature some Irish accents, you just I don't know, get some recordings of Irish people. Like, it's not get Google Irish vlogger and just listen to them at length, and then have a person who does accents replicate that. Like, it's not difficult. Like, if you're good at accents, I don't think it's that difficult. I don't think there's anything inherent about the way we speak that is difficult to replicate.
Yeah. Just find two handsome Irish men in their 30s who are looking for extra work. Like, there's nothing difficult about that.
Oh my god. Maybe part of it is that we've such diversity of accents that they throw up their hands and they're like, whatever, man, we'll just go for leprechaun. It's grand. Don't worry about it. Because I think we had a comment back in the day where remember your brother came on the show for a bit, and someone commented was like, this is the oddest thing ever. Like, I can accept that you and Bill have different accents. You grew up in different areas. But the fact that Bill and his brother have a different accent, that they grew up in the same house. I was like, that is kind of what Ireland is. Like, you kind of go down the street a bit. Or here, rather, if you go up the mountain a little bit, people just talk entirely differently. And it's like a 10-minute drive away.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's
crazy.
mountain people, though.
That's mountain people, though. But anyway, so that was AC Valhalla follow-up, yeah? That's that. And I have a thing to bring up, just a few really quick points. Kara Sarian, who again I think has contributed to the show before, brought up a thing about Rhotic Harmony. I talked about last time about how Rhotic Harmony is, I speculated that it's probably extinct, and Keras steps in with a great correction, so I just thought I'd read it out on air. They say, about Rhotic Harmony, it is true that Yurok, the most famous case of Rhotic Harmony, did unfortunately go extinct fairly recently, though there are revival efforts, but some variety of Rhotic Harmony is also found in the Qiang languages, which live on. And the Qiang languages, which I'm pronouncing wrong, apologies, are like a subset of Chinese languages. So, contrary to my speculations on the last show, Rhotic Harmony is a existing thing currently. It has not died out entirely, though it is exceptionally rare.
Yeah. Okay, so that's in those languages spoken in Sichuan, in kind of centralish China.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, so that was a good correction. So thank you for that, because I was working on the assumption that Europe was pretty much the only example of it. So that's cool. So I've updated my knowledge. Excellent. So then a couple of other quick points. We also got another couple of other emails I just wanted to fire through here. Ryan Grant sends us an email about ocean currents and figuring them out. Now it's quite a long email, so I'm not going to read it out. I'm just going to paraphrase it. The basic gist was, what do you do when you go to put ocean currents on a world and they just don't match up? Like, the shape of your lands or whatever create sort of weird ocean currents and you can't figure out how they would interact, etc. And that's happened to me a couple of times. And in prepping for those ocean current videos, I remember, coming up with a demo land system and going, I don't actually know how this would work. And I've ran into this problem myself. So just real quick, the 2 tips that I give you here, well, let's call it 3 tips that I give you here is, 1, feel free to change the land masses. Like, that's always a thing you can do. You could just be like, life would be so much easier if this was connected. I very often just connect them if there's no story reason not to. 2, remember in the videos I said that ocean currents are like a deep ocean thing. Like, so on continental shelves, we don't really care about them, nor do they kind of exist really. They kind of become like eddy currents and they're more chaotic, etc. So if ever you have like a bay or something that seems to cause weird ocean currents, stick a continental shelf in there, and then you can use that to redirect it into something simpler. Which, to be fair,
life hack.
it's totally valid. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that. And the third is the least satisfactory, I think, is handwave, and just be like, this is, I guess, how they go. Don't really make sense, but fine, handwave it that way. I would be in favor of doing the continental shelf thing, because it can be a neat way of generating underwater topography. In a way, you could look at it like that. So those are my tips there. I hope that helps you out, Ryan. So that was Ryan, and the next email we have comes from Beans Chango. Great username. I believe we had an emailer before called Beans, and I wonder, is it the same Beans, but they just now have submitted their second name, or maybe it's a case that every time this person emails, a new name will be added on, so we'll get like Beans Chango Reginald the Third after like the 4th iteration of emails. If that's the case, I hope it is, because that's really fun.
Emailing a podcast is definitely a reason to change your name. That's the logical conclusion.
No, I mean, it's just the nickname section of the fill-out form. So like, just go mad there, Beans. Every time we get an email, I'll know it's you, Beans, if every time we get an email from you, there are more names. So go and do that. That'll be great. Anyway, the subject is bringing imperialism/colonialism home. I think in the last show I was musing about that it must be kind of weird for colonial empires to bring back the subjugation practices they impose on others back to the home country, because
that was derived from my world building, because
exactly.
the policing tactics were developed abroad and brought back by the Tamar Company.
Exactly. And for me, that seemed really weird, because I can easily see someone wanting to cruelly subjugate other people, but it's less likely in my mind that they want to do that to themselves. Now, obviously, class there plays a role, and I'm assuming elites would have no bother subjugating poorer working classes, etc. But something about it just seemed like it would be a bit of a weird thing to just take very draconian things and just bring them back to your country. But Beans writes in and says that this is actually a thing, and there's a label for it, and it's called Foucault's Boomerang, which is a remarkably fun name for something really not cool. But there you go. So I learned something new again there. Foucault's, or however you pronounce it, Boomerang.
I mean, he does have a funny name. I don't think he was a particularly fun kind of guy, though, Foucault.
Is he the guy from the Pendulum? Is he Mr. Pendulum?
There is Foucault's Pendulum as well. I can't remember what that means, though. But he's the guy who wrote loads about prisons.
Oh, so is that the connection that like lots of imprisonment systems came back to France?
Not.
No?
I don't think directly, but like that they were an interest of his. That was a thing he probably noticed because he was interested in kind of the organization of power in society.
Foucault was a philosopher, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but there you go. We learned a new term. Well, at least I learned a new term. Foucault's Boomerang. Did you know about this, Bill? I
hadn't heard of that term before, but I mean, I was vaguely aware of the practice. And yeah, no, it's as I said, it's a thing that you do see kind of happening. And I guess what I hadn't thought of, but it's probably a very immediate example for a lot of people. This isn't in terms of tactics or things, but if we look at the States, excess military hardware that was developed that was generated and manufactured because it was expected to be used in foreign wars is just sold to police departments. And veterans who have been used to doing colonial violence often end up, they can get jobs. A lot of them go into jobs in policing.
Yeah, now without getting too much into like, you know, oh, look what the states are doing in politics and that sort of jazz. I recall, I mentioned on the show before years ago, but I'll bring it up again because it's been a lasting memory for me. When I was in LA for PatreCon, those many years ago, I remember coming out of that coffee shop in, oh God, where was it, LA? Was it downtown LA I was in? I can't remember. But I came out of a coffee shop anyways, and this police car just rocked up to get donuts or whatever they do. And like there wasn't anything going on. Like there was like no policing was happening. They just stopped out the shop. And then like this car looks like it's like a RoboCop car. Like this sorry, I shouldn't swear, sorry. This like big like honking reinforced thing, you know, like our police cars look kind of like just street cars, but these look like souped up monsters of things. And then out steps this bloke, and he's in like body armor and like visible guns, and I was like, I knew I was doing nothing wrong, obviously, and I knew you know, given the color of my skin, chances are nothing would happen. But like, god damn, like I felt really uneasy, and I felt really like scared in a way. I was like, I am afraid of this person. Like, what happens if this person like weaponized to the nines here? What happens if he just went through a divorce, or he had a bad day, or what happens if like his medication is off or whatever? So many things can go wrong here, and it was like being confronted with an army dude minus the camouflage. It was mad. And then the contrast between that and like say the local guards in my town, they're just normal dudes, do you know? Like there's no guns, no body armor, there's no like tank like cars. They're just dudes. Like they wear shiny yellow jackets sometimes. It's crazy. And I couldn't it was just a weird thing to reconcile in my brain. Like it's like actual scared. And like I'm a white guy, you know, like I can only imagine what it's like for minorities when they see things like it's just mental, absolutely mental. Anyway, sorry, that was mildly politicsy. I'm sorry, folks. But anyway, so then last email, Bill.
This one is from Yolanda Dafron.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one in that I'm going to bring it up because I'm going to try and mine Artifexia for tips and advice here. Yolanda, so the basic gist here is that Yolanda is blind, and they're asking about like how, if I could make Artifexing like the videos, because I'm assuming there isn't a problem with the podcasts, make the videos more accessible to this. And this is a thing, like, I'm not going to lie and say that like I think about all the time, but there is every so often like I proof check colors on my video to check for color blindness, and I pay a little bit more attention to the rate at which I talk in the videos, just for people, like, you know, for accessibility reasons, like as in if I'm going 90 miles an hour, it might be hard to understand and hear, particularly with my accent, and I try and like be conscious of it, but I'm not some saint who spends all the time thinking about it, so I don't want to come across like that. But the blindness thing, I've thought about that a couple of times, and I've been like, this is a really difficult problem to solve because it's visual media, and there's so much that I do that makes my life easier in terms of information and transfer that is like really hard for blind people. Like, one of my favorite tactics when making videos is to be like, so you take this and this, and then I just flash it on screen, so I don't need to burn the words saying what I'm putting on screen. So I use the screen as a means of writing less words. But then you think about it and you're like, well, if you're blind, you know, this and this and this means literally nothing. So Yolanda wrote and caused me to start thinking again about this. So I wanted to bring it up and just ask Artifexia tips, any suggestions what one could do, or do you listen to visual media, or do you watch visual media where you know there's been some catering to visually impaired people, and if that's the case, send me some emails and tips on that, because like if it's a thing that I can do, like, and it's not something that would like fundamentally change how Artifexian works, or like the look of the videos or the feel of the videos, like I'll definitely do it, like, because, you know, the more the merrier. So yeah, I just want to mine Artifexia for accessibility options when it comes to blindness in visual media.
I mean, my reaction here was, yeah, this is a really good point, and this is a thing that, you know, we ought to be able to cater for. And surely there must be some material out there, you know, from the centuries of teaching linguistics, that there must be some kind of resource on how to communicate the IPA. But yeah, maybe there isn't.
Well, on that, Yolanda did specifically talk about like how when I flash up the IPA chart, you know, they can't see it, so they don't understand. They can't visualize how it will be structured. So I did a little bit of digging into that. I think one can get a Braille IPA chart.
Neat.
I think that exists now. Like, there's definitely, I can confirm that they've definitely come up with Braille versions of each of the symbols. Whether or not you could find some sort of, I don't know, company that prints out the chart so you can like actually feel it in its, you know, its rows and column form. I don't know, but there's gotta be something there, I'd imagine. But that doesn't really solve the problem of the video.
Yeah, you can't put that in a YouTube video. Like.
I can't put that in a YouTube video, and nor can I put it in the script document, which is in the description. Because that's why there's kind of significant barriers to making it more blind accessible. And now, obviously, what you could do, and I guess if in a world where views and money and income didn't matter, what you could do is you could like meticulously, you know, narrate what is on screen. But that would lead to, I think a lot of people would just check out at that point and just be like, I'm not going to spend, you know, a minute or two of this video watching them describe an IPA chart.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, like, because there's a balance to be struck.
Is there a way to put in like annotations that can be then read out by a screen reader?
Yeah, see that's again why I want to mine the artifacts here, because until I got this email, I didn't even realize that's the technology, a screen reader. Like I still don't really understand what a screen reader does. Like it watches the screen and it like narrates what my video's doing automatically.
Well, I don't know if they work at all with videos. I'm aware of their usage for social media and stuff, but so I'm assuming it's not going to be able to say Edgar points to the left side of the screen. I mean, I doubt there's that kind of video analysis exists in any kind of commercial form.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't like, and I don't have anyone in my immediate family or friends that is visually impaired that I can kind of tap for this. So yeah, if anyone has any ideas or know of creators that have done something to be a little bit more inclusive to visually impaired people, send me an email, and if it's a thing that can be incorporated into my workflow without radically changing how Artifexian works, I'll totally do it, because like why the hell not? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I'm very interested in as well, to see how this can be achieved.
So as keeping with tradition, and because I've talked for ages for most of the first section of the show, I think it's high time Bill talked for a while now, so we're going to do some world building. Whee!
Let's do it. Let us do it. We have once again returned to the world of Icairn. And this is a letter, as is the custom. And it is from a familiar voice that listeners of the podcast may recall. My dear cousin, I write to you with joyous news. My interminable wait has come to an end, and I am at long last in command of my own vessel. I have bored you at length with the dreary details of this last period of service in the depot. No doubt the ire of my old captain kept me among the groundsfolk for so long. Has she forgotten my valour at Selin Lake, or my navigation in returning the prize beyond the Usain Belt? Or perhaps another officer, wielding their connections and influence, has seen fit to punish the upstart Yartlen. For I have made enemies by the score, dear cousin, though I care for it not. Has word of my success at the card table reached the rumour mongers at home? No doubt they too say I cheat. Well, they shall not laugh now that I have my own vessel. Soon I shall show them my worth, and none can say my success was unfairly earned. Now, I am not a full captain. We do not accord such status to the commanders of patrol vessels of this kind. I am yet a lieutenant, though no longer bound, and subordinate to me are a mate, a weird, 4 gunners, a knot of marines, and the usual complement of a vessel of this size, numbering 50 souls in all. My weird is a decent sort, for her kind, and served with me also on the Aspire. My mate is ill-tempered but curiously quiet. My command is the Nomad, a fine craft. She measures 22 lengths from bow to stern. Allow me the indulgence of calling her by a human form, dear cousin, a tradition among those of us in the service. She is 8 lengths in breadth across her thickest point, and 6 lengths in height through her thickest point. She carries 4 batteries, 1 below, 2 above at either side, and 1 facing forward. We have 1 officer of gunnery for each battery, you see. There is ample space within. We are decently stocked with shot and provisions, and yet have space to take on great deals of loot, prisoners, or further crew. Our orders as they stand are simply to patrol the ranges and valleys hereabouts, on the lookout for independent traders operating without a charter, or rival companies in breach of treaties, and to check in on the various holdings and settlements dotted in this corner of the province. We shall return to the depot every 12 days for 2 days' respite. I hope in time to be granted an independent cruise. Should I demonstrate sufficient cunning in my manoeuvres, I shall be allowed to act upon my own intelligence, and given greater freedom to pursue business both for myself and the company. But I wish you could see her. Perhaps I shall strike lucky and be granted a cruise, or given an important assignment that returns me to Mearsphere. You shall be invited aboard as my guest of honour, so you may see for yourself her fine northern woods and her elegant propulsion, the finest Devint that Lanx workshops can produce, and so compact. I trust all is well with you? Do reply and tell me of your fortunes. The news from Mearsphere is naught but agitation and unrest. I pray your businesses are not plagued so with disloyal groundsfolk. I will see you soon. Yar te Yarthlin, Lieutenant, assigned Commander, Patrol Vessel Nomad, Tamar Company.
Cool. It's been 2 months since it's been world building. It's almost like nostalgia at this point. That was cool. I like it. I remember Yar from back in the day. Immediately I was like, I know that name. He's like an OG character, or they are like an OG character.
Yar is the first point of view character that we had in Ikaern.
Yeah,
as I think
for sure. So the usual for anyone who is new to this or hasn't followed your writing from before, would you give a little bit of detail, a little background detail about who this is and how they got to this point?
Absolutely. So this is on the planet named Ikaern, which is in a setting that we originally made years ago, and I called mine Handwavia. So it's one of the planets in that system. And I wanted to evoke kind of tropes of planetary romance, a certain type of fantasy I kind of enjoy. And over time, it kind of changed and has become this sort of depiction of something analogous to 18th century and 19th century colonialism. Yar is an officer within the Tamar Company, which is a sort of colonial trading company in the vein of the East India Company or the Royal African Company or the Hudson's Bay Company, independent of a kingdom or a state, but it operates according to similar principles. And Yar here is writing to his cousin and telling him he has got a promotion. The last we saw of Yar, he was still a probationary officer, kind of becoming a member of this organization, but now he is finished his cadetship and is a full lieutenant, and as of this update is in command of his own vessel, the patrol vessel Nomad. The thing about that, guys, that I should probably point out here is that these are aerial craft. They're not sea-going vessels.
Sky pirates.
They're more like sky privateers.
Yeah. This is not your... what's the name of that kid's book? That's really good. With the sky pirates. Is it
Edge Chronicles.
Edge Chronicles? This is not...
Never read them, total guess.
You're right, though. It is. It totally is. In fact, actually, that is a thing I actually want to put on Artifexian Book Club, the list. Even though it's a kid's book, I'd really like to go back and reread them, because that was one of the earliest sort of books that got me into like fantasy literature. That'd be a fun one. They Sky Pirates, like as in proper, these are galleys with like flying galleys, like proper fantasy sky pirates feature heavily in those books. So not that. So come here to me. So that means Yar. This seems like a very fast ascension up the ranks.
Well,
and there seems to be something in the text that implies that maybe they were this. He was a bit fortuitous to get this. Like he mentions, none can say it's unfairly earned. Or no doubt they say I cheat. Is there a little bit of kind of like, because like you said, he was a probationary officer getting into the company or whatever, and now he's like now captain of a ship.
Well, this is, it's not like the very next letter. There has been a bit of a gap in time here.
Oh, sufficient. So this is a normal progression. The time is such that this is a normal type of progression.
Yeah, like it's not scandalously fast. And also bear in mind what we understand of Yar's character. He's not an entirely reliable narrator when it comes to himself.
Sure.
And talking about himself, and there would be a degree of bragging and such in what he says.
I mean, a lot of that first bit is very much him being like, "Let me ream off my CV of achievements here, pal."
Well, it's also look at the hardships I've endured, and yet I am successful.
Can you?
But yeah, so he completed his probationary period, and then became a lieutenant. And then for a period was lieutenant bound, so he was assigned to ground duties and administrative works and such in one of the depots, and he kind of felt hard done by that. He should have gotten something on a vessel, and now has managed to get his own vessel.
And can you remind us what his valor at Selin Lake was, and the returning of the prize from the Usain Belt and the card table and all that jazz?
So we don't know much about Selin Lake. It was we just know that it was a battle, an engagement between the Tamar Company and another company, in which the Tamar Company were victorious. Selin Lake is, if you refer to the map that I made of the Abeski area, it's in the kind of northwest. The returning the prize from beyond the Usain Belt, that was the topic of the first letter that we got from Yar.
I remember there was something mysterious on board.
Yes.
Yeah.
The vessel was called the Sanan, which we learned from a later letter. And the Aspire that he served on previously, they stopped these smugglers, as they called them, and they took command of their vessel. They stranded the crew, took command of the Sanan, and the captain of the Aspire then went off and left Yar to bring with a skeleton crew to bring it back to port, to depot.
What was the prize? Literally just the ship. Did we ever find out what that mysterious object was?
We have not. No, that has not been revealed.
Oh.
The prize, prize is the ship. So that would be taken from real world history. Like if you take a ship, the ship was called a prize.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I know so little about antiquated naval terminology and traditions and all that jazz.
It's quite alright.
Completely out of my depth. I actually recorded Master and Commander as a sort of like, I should watch this for research purposes whenever Bill talks about ships and stuff. And that's actually a thing I'm planning to do soon. The card tables. Is there anything about that in your previous writings, or is that just him bragging about being class at playing poker?
Not from Yar, but we've also had a few letters from Dejag to Shensha, who is another officer another lieutenant actually within the Tamar Company, who I think is Mirsviri as well. But he wrote to an acquaintance of his, telling them to be careful of an officer, a young Tamari officer by the name of Yar, because he's a cheat at the card table.
Card shark. Cool. And then, so the other thing I was going to ask about was a little bit about the roles on a ship. And this is mainly me just being curious because I know very little about, like I said, about naval stuff. A mate. That's like a first mate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like your second in command, like your.
Yeah. Well, mate is a kind of it kind of means officer. So, for example, I know a lot about this from, or my main understanding of this is from kind of the master and commander sort of era. You would have a gunner's mate who would be an assistant to the gunner. And you would have the surgeon's mate would be an assistant to the surgeon. The first mate would be an assistant to the captain, I guess.
Oh, okay. So just like a secretary. Not a secretary.
But a secretary as a kind of an official role. Like it would be a thing of authority as well.
So would this be the
if it was the mate of the vessel, it would be a thing of authority.
So like this is Jonathan Frakes to Patrick Stewart sort of vibes here.
Yeah. In this context, the mate here is the second officer.
Great. Okay. Cool. And then gunners, I'm assuming, are just people who man guns.
Well, they're the officers in charge of a battery. Yeah.
Right, and then
so they would be the guns themselves would be operated by crew, but under the direction of the gunner.
Oh, okay, cool. And then a marine, are they just like soldiers on the ship?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're soldiers. So they would be used for like ground engagements, infantry type engagements. You would use the crew for that as well, but the marines would be more suited for it. We will be better trained for it, and they would also be used for onboard discipline.
And then, so the collective noun there, knot of marines, is that did you make that up, or is that do we call them a knot of marines?
Not that I'm aware of. I was like, a few, a handful.
Not that I'm aware of. Lol.
Hey.
And then finally, weird. We talked about the weird before. Can you give me a rundown again about what a weird does and what's their role?
So the weird would be in charge of communication, would have some input to things like navigation, and then other weirder stuff.
Weirder as in ship weird, or weirder as in stranger?
Stranger things.
Oh.
Yeah.
Care to elaborate?
Well, I've made it pretty explicit previously. Things leaning towards more occult topics.
Did you make that explicitly? Did we talk about the occult in Cairn?
Fairly sure I'm fairly sure I have.
Okay. It's been a long time. Cool. Okay, cool. And then, so the other thing I was going to ask about was, you say here, allow me the indulgence of calling her, the ship, by a human form, a tradition among those of us in the service. So that struck me as a bit weird. Weird. Lol.
Not.
That's not weird. Lol. That struck me as a bit weird. So because in obviously IRL, the idea of calling inanimate objects he or she is fairly well understood, even outside of specific trades like military and naval stuff and things like that. That seems to imply that this is not a well understood thing, and normal people wouldn't say like, "Oh, she's a fine axe that I have here."
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the case, is it?
Not exactly. So kind of a part of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to think of this as trying to conceive of this as a translation from the Abeski language or whatever, that maybe they have an animate, inanimate, human, some kind of noun class distinction like that, and he here is using the human form for the inanimate, and I have translated that into the English idiom of referring to a vessel, a seafaring vessel, as she. So that's one element there. I don't know. I haven't fully pinned down exactly what I'm thinking about that, but it's something like that.
Okay.
The other thing of it is Yar just kind of being a bit up himself, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's what we say in the service," which of course everyone knows that, but he's, even if it is well known, he's still going to kind of use it as a thing to kind of be bragging about or to remind people that he's in the service.
Oh dear, Yar seems like a lad I would not like to go for a drink with.
He's a bit insufferable.
Yeah, he comes across like that. God bless him. Further on you go, I hope in time to be granted an independent cruise. Mm-hmm. Explain that. Is that just literally like he hopes to proceed up the ranks a little bit, be given command of a ship that isn't just patrolling, I can kind of go wherever the hell it wants? Is that what's meant by independent cruise?
Roughly, yeah. It's not exactly a rank thing, but it is kind of a position of trust. And it's given as a sign that you're a good earner and you're good at your job, and it wouldn't necessarily be a different vessel. It would just be you're in command of the Nomad. You can right. Go and act more independently, take a little bit more personal responsibility.
So he's got to slum it out on patrol for a little bit.
He's got to demonstrate that he is competent in command.
And so what's the career progression here? God, it just seems so boring and adulting, to be honest. Let's talk about the career progression of people in the Tamar company. But he's off patrolling, and then he hopes to get this independent cruise thing. Is then the next thing to hope for a full-fledged captaincy, and then are we looking Admiralty? Is that even a thing that exists?
Yeah, it's not a strictly linear thing here necessarily. You could get a full captaincy without having an independent cruise. There's so many different roles that a commander of a vessel can fill. But yeah, the next step would that he would be a captain. And then there would be ranks in there, and then I'm not sure whether admiral would be the term that is used. I'll have to check what I've said previously. But then once you get above that, you would be a say commander of a detachment or of a fleet, and then beyond that would be kind of positions under the military commission.
But hold on, is the commander of a fleet, is that not necessarily what an admiral is?
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether they would use the term admiral.
Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. And then you're in the military commission. So what's the top job? What's the Jeff Bezos of the? Actually, that doesn't work anymore because he stepped down from Amazon. But what's the Tim Cook of the Tamar company? Where can you go where you can't go no further?
You mean who's going to get guillotined when this workers' revolution actually comes? Good question.
Yeah. Who's first in line?
I guess if you're talking strictly militarily, it would be the kind of senior positions on the military commission. Okay,
and then not talking strictly militarily?
You'd be shareholders of the different offices within the company.
Okay.
Remember we talked about the structure before?
Sure.
And the thing here is you can pursue your business interests within the company parallel to your military progression.
Yes, I remember talking about that. And is the military commission, is that just kind of I'm envisaging a sort of CIA war room type jazz where you have 10 owl blokes in heavily bejeweled green jackets sitting around making calls? Is that kind of what the military commission is?
I would imagine maybe not exactly it's just 10 or whatever, but yeah, it is a, they meet and they discuss overall strategy. They discuss probably specific issues pertaining to specific campaigns and so on.
Okay, cool. And then the final thing I had to bring up was way down near the bottom you go, the finest Devint that Lance workshops can produce. What is a Devint?
The Devint is the engine.
Is this like a magic engine that makes them fly?
Probably.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, remember that the thing for newer or unfamiliar listeners is that there's very low, relatively very low gravity on this planet compared to Earth or compared to the other human inhabited planets in the system. So that's why I went for kind of a aerial craft kind of direction. So that helps. But yeah, the Devint is both what it aids it in its kind of a buoyancy and it gives it propulsion.
Oh, any chance you could write something about that? I'd like to hear a I don't know, like a mechanics report on the reparations of a Devint.
There's a chance.
Yeah, because that'd be fun. Because I know you don't want to go like super duper magic, like as in like gown wielding old men firing lightning bolts out of their fingers sort of jazz.
Yeah.
But you're also not going for like zero magic. So if it's in any way kind of magical, I'd love to see how you balance those things. Because I find sometimes that can be a tricky balancing act because if you're ostensibly going for a low magic setting and you just pitch the level of the magic wrong, it can really throw you, you know? Whereas if you just go like, you know, it's a free-for-all magic thing, then fine, it's grand, whatever. So I think you've put yourself in a fairly tricky position, and it'd be really interesting to see how you'd write around that.
I sure have.
And also, I just kind of want to know how the nerd in me wants to know how these ships are propelled, and the mechanism by which that happens. Cool. Well, is there anything in there that I missed? There's always some subtext that I missed. So that was the part of the show where Bill goes, well, actually, the point of this, Edgar, was X, Y, and Z. So will you tell us the point of this?
No, there's not really a point to it as such. I realised I hadn't actually written anything about the crafts themselves, and you wanted to know more about that. So here you go.
I will say, I don't know if this is you indulging me, or you just want to do it anyways, but part of when I was listening to you read this, I was like, he's being really visual about this, and I've talked at length before about how I'm a real visual sort of person, and like I want people to paint me word pictures, but like, and when you went through this and you were like, oh, it's 8 lengths in breadth, 6 lengths in height, carries 4 batteries, so I was like, Jesus, he's really painting a picture here for me before. So I was like, oh, thanks, if that is for me, thanks, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was in part because, you know, it's something you'd expressed curiosity about. Let me think, just have a quick reread of it here. It's funny that you mention Master and Commander, because one of the elements here I wholesale ripped off from the beginning of the first book in the series. The first book is called Master and Commander. The film is a sort of a mishmash adaptation of a couple of elements from different books.
Is the film good?
I really like it. Yeah, there's debate whether it's a good adaptation. I think it gets some stuff right, it gets some stuff wrong. I enjoy the film. Yeah.
Yeah, but aside from the books, though, it's a good film. Like, I'm not going to waste 3 hours of my life and hate you for it.
You might, yeah. I don't know.
Okay, anyway, so what did you rip off from Master and Commander?
So the beginning of Master and Commander is not like the very scene or whatever, but the kind of the initial premise of Master and Commander is Jack, who is the main character, is a lieutenant in the Navy, and he receives a promotion to Master and Commander, and he gets his first command. He gets the HMS Speedy, I think it's called.
Class.
Or the Sophie. He gets HMS Sophie. It's based on a vessel called HMS Speedy. And he is not yet a captain. He is still technically a lieutenant, but he is known as Master and Commander because he is the master and the commander of the vessel. So it's kind of like a slightly in-between thing, in between being a lieutenant and being a full captain. And that's what I wanted to do here. Just kind of a shout out to that series.
Plagiarism, Bill.
Homage.
We're going to get demonetized Cancelled from the internet. Big master and commander is going to come after us.
Patrick O'Brien is going to rise from the grave and hunt me down.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, like, that's hardly a rip-off per se, because I'm
No, it's, as I said, that's kind of an homage.
Yeah.
And I think it's a sensible kind of thing to have, that you're given this kind of limited command before you given full captaincy.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, the dimensions I gave here are derived from looking at the dimensions of sailing ships in the 19th century and kind of thinking about the differences for what I have and extrapolating from there.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So as I said before, a length is roughly the height of a average to tall person on Ecairn.
But average to tall people on Ecairn are much taller than here.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's quite a bit. In my head, I've just doubled. Basically, a length I've put somewhere between 8 and maybe 10 feet is what
I'd aim for maybe the slightly lower end of that.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. Well, that's almost very close to a precise answer. Jesus. But yeah, cool. Like I said, it's I know it's only been 2 months since we last did this, but it actually is kind of fun nostalgia to see a piece of world building in front of me again and be like, we're doing this again. This is great. Shall we crack on to my stuff?
Yeah, let's.
So I have very little to say about this because what's happened is it's been a chaotic month, and it's been a 2-video month because the previous month it was delayed, etc., and then family over and all this sort of nonsense. So I actually haven't had a chance to look at comment sections at all yet. I will in preparation for follow-up videos. So I actually kind of don't really know what the response to these things are or what the people find interesting or confusing, etc. yet. So all I really want to say, and then I'll throw it to Bill for questions and comments or whatever, is just 2 shout outs here. Shout out to Alex, aka Former, for collabing with me on the How to Write Languages for Animals video. It's been received really well just by pure metrics, and Alex was a joy to work with. And I'm already concocting ideas about how I could perhaps do another collab with them, because they're really cool and they're on something really unique, and they're very good at non-human conlang, and it's something I'd like to work more with. So if you're listening, Alex, thank you so much. You were class.
Yeah, it was a cool video. I enjoyed it.
It was fun, and it was purposefully a very overviewy type video. We didn't go into a whole bunch of detail. I'd love to at some stage make a real nitty gritty detail sort of thing. I don't know, for example, here's how to do noun class for lizards, something like that. Where it's just really getting into the nuts and bolts of in thinking about how they speak and the world around them and how that informs the grammar of how they speak. I'd love to do that. And also, I've said it to Alex in DMs, and I think it's kosher to share. They need to start doing a YouTube channel themselves, because clearly people love this stuff, judging by the metrics. And if they were to make a video series on here's a new lang for a cat person or whatever, I'm going to take you through the process of making it. That would go down an absolute storm. So I'm heavily lobbying Alex to be come on, make it happen. Let's go. Because I think that would be amazing. I would watch the living bejesus out of that if that existed. So yeah, shout out to Alex. And then the other shout out is to World Anvil, who were sponsors of the Glacier 1 video. They when you have a sponsor in a video, there's usually a sort of implicit thing that deadlines are to be adhered to, because they're a business and things need to run like clockwork, otherwise it's all chaos. I obviously did not meet a deadline the previous month. It was 2 and a bit weeks late, and World Anvil were just cool about it. I was look, I'm sorry, I'm going to be way late. And they were yeah, just whatever, just email us when it's good to go, and send us a copy or whatever. So they were really sound. I really appreciate that they are just 2 people, 2 nerds on the internet making a thing that they like. and they're not some big bad corporation who has their marketing manager on to me to be all like, sorry, I thought the video was meant to be out on X date and it's not. What's this about? So they're super chill folks, and they were really understanding with my inability to be able to write properly about glaciers in an adequate time frame. So shout out Alex, shout out Word Anvil. These were really great. You've watched the videos, Bill. Have you got any thoughts or questions or anything?
A small few. Yes, a small few.
Cool.
About the Glaciers video, it reminded me of, was it the beach or the coastal features video?
Sure. Coastal
just
landforms.
The coastal landforms one, which is just like, cool photographs and names of things and showing us how they worked. Kind of like fun junior cert geography.
It is a bit like that, yeah.
Yeah, but no, that is entirely a compliment. Like, that's by no means any kind of criticism. I thought it was really good. And yeah, there's kind of, in some of the stuff you can really see how culture affects language that we used. So many of the terms for glaciation stuff are derived from the fact that there's glaciers in the Alps, and there's like all of English is based on that. Like they're all French terms, or there's, what was the Lombardy something?
The Lombardy? No.
There was something about Lombardy in the Glaciers video.
Was there?
100%.
Jeez, I don't remember that at all.
Hold on, I'm going to look at it real quick.
Lombardy? Really?
There was a Lombardy something, or no, Piedmont.
Oh, Piedmont, yeah.
That was it. It was Piedmont. Yeah. I retract what I said about 100%. Yeah, there was something about Piedmont. Well, that's that's a province in somewhere, some kind of alpine region, and it's, that becomes this kind of universal term. That's just a kind of an interesting example of that happening.
And I think as well, the term nunatak being, I think it's derived from Greenlandic, and as far, and that's another case of when you think glaciers, like most people think Antarctica or Greenland. Now, not many folks knocking around the Antarctic, but there are folks knocking around Greenland, so you'd expect there to be some nomenclature from there. So that's kind of cool. And as far as I remember, the nunatak means, I'm going to probably have to correct this and follow up in the next show, but if I recall correctly, it means something like that which earths, as in earth, like the earth, that which earths, in Greenlandic. And I thought that was kind of a fun way of describing it, like bits of rock sticking out of the ice. It's that which earths. So I thought that was kind of fun. But yeah, you can definitely see how culture, where these things are, affects how we talk about them.
Yeah,
for sure.
So nunna means earth or country or land, and tak is a suffix meaning something that has been. Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think with the Glaciers one video, because really what was the reason why it was so late is that the video was actually meant to be twice as long, and it was meant to be, because in this video I talk about specifically only about what glaciers look like when they're knocking around, as opposed to what they look like, which is the part that's actually more interesting for world building, what they leave behind after they go. And
gonna see some drumlins,
but spoilers for next show, I think there is good world building material to be mined from post-glacial landforms. Like, for example, this will come up in the next video, Edinburgh Castle, it's a famous castle in Edinburgh, and it's up on a big hill, and it's very prominent over the surroundings. Have you seen it before? You must have, Bill.
Yeah, lots of times.
Yeah. It's built on a thing called the Crag and Lee structure, which is a particular type of hill that glaciers leave behind. Certain glaciers leave behind as they go away, and it's like a very defensible type of hill because its morphology is such that steep sides, and with one sloping side you can build a town on, but everything else, it's basically you get 3/4 of the circle of the hill or whatever is defensible, and so there's lots about post-glacial landforms that can really feed into where you'd place settlements and towns and things like that. So I can't wait to make Glaciers 2 and talk about those things. I think they are really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's anything else on Glaciers 1?
So you give latitudes and altitudes for modern Earth and for our last ice age as 2 examples. I guess if you want to do something in between, you can just extend that, or you can just like choose a point in between what you gave, or if you want to do like a more advanced ice age, an icier age, you can just make everything a bit more so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are only data points I can get my hands on, and beyond that, it's kind of up to your discretion as a world builder.
Yeah. Cool.
I will say, actually, just on that, real quick, there's a fun point that I'll probably bring up in a follow-up on the elevation thing. Eagle-eyed viewers, if you watch that video again and you see I flash up a graphic that shows the minimum elevation of glaciers on a modern Earth and on the Ice Age Earth, last glacier maximum Earth. And eagle-eyed viewers will notice that it doesn't follow a hump, like a normal distribution. It kind of looks like a saddle with a little like trough around the equator. So as in like glaciers in the poles can lie at really low altitudes. Glaciers in the sort of 30-degree mark lie at really high altitudes, and you'd expect that glaciers at the equator lie at even higher altitudes because it's warmer there. They're the minimum distance we pushed up, but in fact they're actually lower than at 30 degrees. And that's a counterintuitive thing that I think I'm sure people picked up on this. And as far as I can tell, the fun thing there is that it's to do with the Hadley cell. And like it's also tied to deserts in a way. Like the reason why deserts exist where they do, like the Sahara exists where it does on Earth, is because the Hadley cell comes down, it ends at 30 degrees ish, and that's an extremely dry zone. And hence why you have desert, but also that dryness, because you need precipitation to make glaciers, you need snow. Apparently, that it being dry pushes up the minimum altitude of a glacier way up, such that it's higher than at the equator. Which that caused me, like, I had a couple of days there trying to figure out why the hell this graph looks wrong to my eyes. Because again, I expected, like, glaciers go at 0 meters elevation in the poles, and it's just a straight line up to the equator, but it's not. It follows this weird hump sort of thing. So on your world, if you have a standard atmospheric cell distribution, I'll leave links to a video on atmospheres, standard modern Earth distribution, your glaciers will follow that elevation curve.
Neat.
Yeah, and it's really counterintuitive, and like I genuinely learned a new thing there.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So you have to account for the available moisture.
Yeah.
As well as just the available solar energy or whatever. Or the temperature.
Well, in fact, you have to account for... I think original version of the script went into this in detail, and I was just kind of like, no one actually gives a shit about this. No one actually cares about this. Sorry. But you have to account for, I think it's 4 factors. You need ample precipitation. You need a decent gradient. So I think any gradient beyond about 10 degrees, glaciers won't form. The snow will just avalanche away. You need protection from sun, otherwise the snow will melt away and not form ice. And you need protection from wind, otherwise the snow will blow away. So there's actually a whole bunch of factors that need to come into play to ensure that you have a glacier. But like I thought to myself, like, for world building purposes, it's fine. Just if you have a high enough mountain, put the glaciers on it. It's fine. You don't need to worry. Like, would this be a particularly windy slope on this mountain? Like, that's not something that we should concern ourselves with too much.
So list those again for me. Protection from sun, protection from wind, and...
protection from sun, protection from wind, ample precipitation, like snow, and then the slope needs to be subtle enough.
Gotcha.
Because if the slope's too steep, the snow just falls away.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of limiting factors when it comes to glaciers. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I've talked loads. Glaciers. Any more points on glaciers?
Those are all of my points concerning glaciers.
Any points on how to write languages for non-humans?
Horses can't breathe through their mouths.
I know. I had no idea. That's all Alex. I was like, huh. Wow. Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew? I mean, it makes
Obviously
sense.
Alex, but...
Well, that is their specialty.
Presumably most vets.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably a lot of people knew, to be fair, but I didn't know. That's, fascinating.
yeah, it kind of made sense to me after they said it. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I've never really seen a horse like pant. You only ever hear them like go like, they like violently exhale through their nose.
They snort, yeah.
Yeah, they snort. Like they don't really pant or anything. But yeah, so that was a new thing I learned. Like, and to be fair, most of that video was new stuff I learned. Like, because when Alex was like, "Oh, lizards have a koala," I was like, "What's a koala?" And I was like, "Oh, that's this weird feature that we don't have." Like, my knowledge of biology is almost non-existent. So that entire video was a massive learning curve for me. So shout out to Alex again.
I love what I have written down here is I love the name of the corvid species. I probably meant to write language there. I don't remember them naming a species specifically. Did they?
Yes. Well, they named like I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry, I can't roll my R's correctly. But they said like speakers.
So the name of the language. I thought that was really, really good.
The phonoaesthetics of that, I haven't heard that language being spoken at length, but the words I have heard in Alex's LCC talk, I'll leave links to that in the show notes as well, and in this video, it's really evocative of a crow. Like I could hear it, and I could be like, that I can see a crow speaking this, like with the clicks and the rolled R's. I hear their beaks being tapped together, and I was like, you've nailed it. Like, you really have nailed the vibe of a talking crow. It's great, absolutely great.
The next point I have here is I know this is true for parrots. I'm not sure about other birds, but when you're creating the phonological inventory, they could create sounds that sound really like things that we can do just using different mechanics. Parrots, they can fake bilabial sounds. They can make P's and B's, but they don't have lips, so they get it somewhere else. I think that's probably the only thing I have here that is in approaching a criticism. But, there was nothing on that chart that I remember that was analogous or represented by bilabials, but there may be ways to do it. Just it would be with a different mechanism.
That's fair. I would say I touched on it at the start of the video where I said something like my cat people always end up being either humans cosplaying cats or parrots cosplaying cats, and that was a nod to that. Like I assume that when I want to make a non-human species talk like humans, in my head I just go, they just have what a parrot has stuck in the back of their throat, and that allows them to produce all the human sounds. So we we touched on a little bit there, but I would say that's fine, and you can totally do that. There's precedent. Parrots are a thing. But I also think that if you rely on that too heavily, you end up just giving yourself an excuse to not try and create your conlang. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've just created humans.
You've just and now you're back to like it's Meowth from Pokemon. Like it's a cat that speaks like a human, which is fine. Like, it's not a criticism you want to do that. In fact, on the live streams I do for the patron only live streams, I'm kind of doing that sort of thing currently. And it's not a criticism at all. But if you are interested in trying to really think to yourself, like, how the hell might a cat talk? It's fun to impose that creative constraint and be like, no, like they won't have sounds, like, because their lips won't be able to do that. And I'm not going to say that there's some sort of imagined organ that allows them to do it. I think that's a fun constraints lead to great creativity, and I think it's a good constraint. I want to see someone tackle the horse slang though, because I began thinking about it, just kind of like, how the hell are you going to do that? Because it's like, I can only think of maybe 4 or 5 sounds that are analogous to what we can do that horses might be able to do, and I'm like, how are you going to make a language out of that at all? Like, I can't even think of a valid inventory. So someone needs to do that and send it to me. That would be gas.
That kind of leads into my next point here, which is I love that you redesigned the chart so it wasn't the IPA chart, that it was a similar structure, but with the biological constraints of the species in question, because that was kind of the first thing I was thinking of when I saw the topic for the video. I was like, well, they can't use the IPA, that'll be ridiculous. And you didn't, so criticism dodged.
Oh, I would say, sorry, I'm going to jump in there. Not me at all. That's literally Alex. That's he just sent me his charts. I didn't collect that information at all. So all criticism dodging compliments should be directed at Alex there.
Good work, Alex. Edgar, you are still a buffoon and a coward.
On the IPA chart thing, though, I want to just point out here, I think that's the kind of the human approximation slant where you kind of like, it's the IPA, but not really. I think that's the key thing here, because in my head, I would have thought, well, if you're going to make a cat language, what you're actually going to do is just like, record a bunch of cat noises and then like put them as spoken samples in some wiki or whatever and say like that's their language, and then assign some sort of meaning to it, which is fine, obviously, but it doesn't work very well if you're like writing a book. You can't be like, and then Mr. Fluffy got up and said cat noises.mp3. You can't really do that. So the idea of like, no, these animals, will treat them as actual animals. Like, they talk, like they make the sounds of actual birds, they make actual cat meows, but we're just going to produce like a human reproducible translation of their language that we like, they speak their language and it sounds like cats and birds, but we need to be able to interact with these people, so we're going to do this like hybrid IPA thing. That's great. I think that's so cool, because that means you can write it in books, you can do all this jazz, and you can kind of get across the feel of the language without literally just having a recording of a crow cawing and being like, that's the language. So I think that's I probably should have overplayed that a little bit more to be all like, this is great, human reproducible versions of the language. So it's almost like we're not writing language, we're writing the human reproducible version of it, and I think that's genius. But sorry, I cut across there. Next point.
Well, I think I follow. Yes, that makes sense. The next thing I have written down here is O Long Johnson ellipsis hell yes. So that was from the sample of all of the weird sounds cats can make, and it used a clip from one of my very favorite videos from long ago on the internet, which is of a cat saying "O Long Johnson, O Don Piano, all the live long day," and I was really hoping that cat would be included, and it was. So
do you know what the funny story here is?
Yeah,
I did not know of that as a thing.
Really?
At all, yeah. I just Alex sent me a link to a funny cat noise compilation, and I just scanned through for the most like out there examples in the video and pasted them together. And I had no idea that was a meme at all.
Really?
Zero clue.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no idea. And I think some patrons were like, they mentioned "Oh Long Johnson." I was like, what are you talking about? I had to do a bit of Googling and investigation. It was like, that's the cat in the video.
Hold on, give me 40 seconds. I'm just actually going to watch that video.
The original video or my video?
The original video.
I'll give you 40 seconds. It's just me and you folks. Me and Bill's left us to watch a cat.
No, I'm still here.
I hope that's like, that is actually the cat making those noises. That isn't like doctored or anything, is it?
I'm pretty sure it really is. Cats
are just mad. They're actually just insane.
Oh, that was great. Thank you.
No worries. I'm glad I could be of service. So any last points on the video?
Carolina chickadees have grammar. Double exclamation mark. That was pretty neat.
Yep.
Do the letters used correspond to like pitch?
No.
Okay.
I think
why are they given in that order? A, E, B, C, D, H, D?
I have no idea, and I suspect it's probably something like why the ordering of star classification is all out of order. It's probably because they recorded A, B, and C first, and then someone came along and was like, Well, actually, there's actually kind of like an E one there, and it happens
Okay,
in
yeah.
association with A lot or whatever, and they stuck it in the middle. It's
And
probably,
then they found DH last.
then they found, well, the DH thing is, I think would be, now this is me speculating, but I think that's easily explained in that it might just be a variation on D. Like it's the waveform is almost exact the same, but just a little bit different, whereas the rest of them are like completely unique. Like that one I think is easy to explain. But yeah, that why they're out of order is probably just haphazard gathering of information, I imagine.
Because it kind of makes sense, like, to think of it that way. If you look at the first three, A, E, B, that's like a fifth and then another fifth.
I don't think it's got anything to do with music notes, man. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Carolina
And
had a
my last point here is crows are great. I'm not sure what that was specifically in reference to, but I stand by it.
I have, yeah, crows are great. Our cat is permanently murdering all the birds around the house.
As cats are wont to do.
Yeah, and it's kind of a, like, I'd say every day or two a new bird is presented to us as offering. And
Are they crows though?
no, but there's been some, well, I don't know. I'm not good with the old biology. There's been some blackbirds with black beaks, and they've been large.
Yeah, it's probably a crow then.
I don't know what it is or isn't a crow. Like, when is a, well, no, I know that a crow and a blackbird are different because a blackbird has a yellow beak, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, some sort of blackbird. Anyhow,
You need yourself an expert in bird law.
bird law. What are they called? Ornithologists? Is that it?
Well, they're bird scientists. You need a bird lawyer.
I feel like this is a meme or a joke I'm not understanding.
Yeah, no, that's a shout out for those in the audience who'll get it.
Okay, I'm so out of.
That's okay.
I'm so out of touch with internet culture. I feel so old.
This is TV culture, but yeah.
Okay, do you experience that? We'll do axioms then in a second, I promise, folks. Have you experienced getting old? Is this a thing that's affecting you? Like, as not the sort of, like, you know, that you're getting older, obviously that's occurring, but do you feel yourself becoming less aware of, like, pop culture trends in a way that wasn't occurring like 10 years ago?
I think I had a fair bit of alienation from stuff about 10 years ago. There was stuff I wasn't getting. There are certain things now that probably are that are like, kind of, I don't understand that, or I come to things late or whatever. But not that much. No, I think I'm reasonably up to date on such things.
I keep thinking that I am, and then I'm confronted with no, like, say, slang terms or whatever, where I'm just like, I didn't even realize that was a thing. Because in college, like, I think I was pretty au fait with a lot of the slang in common use, whatever. But like now, like, you know, words like clutch. I sound like such an old man here. I'm sorry, folks. But words like clutch and things like that, which have kind of cropped up, I'm kind of like, I find myself going to Urban Dictionary and having to go, what does that mean? And like learn about it because I'm just out of the loop. And it just makes me feel so old. It's terrible, Bill.
Slang maybe not, but like I memes and stuff and trends. I think I'm not doing too bad for my age.
No, I don't know. I think I'm doing worse for my age. It got so bad. Like, obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious here. It's not actually bad, but I got kind of like irrationally anxious about like the progression of time that I put up a poster in my little office space that says I am still 31. So I look at it every day and I'm reminded that if I look, I think to myself, if I look at this every day, it's going to slow the process of getting older because it'll feel like I've been 31 for ages and I'm not, life is not just leaving me by, which is something I stress about irrationally.
But then you'll have the day that you have to change that poster and it'll all hit you all at once and it'll be even worse.
Well, that may happen. I have no data to suggest what will happen because I've yet to do that. But my hope is that I'll hit 32 and think to myself, Jesus, that 31 poster has been up for a long time. Ergo, it's going to be a long time before I'm 33. And I'm hoping my brain will spin it that way as opposed to, you know, all at once. All the existential angst coming in all at once. But yeah, it's a thing I'm weirdly, irrationally afraid of, getting old and like losing touch. Like I worry about becoming like the uncool dad who thinks he's cool. I worry about being that person. Because those people are just cringe, and I don't want to be those people. But I feel like I am that person, and it's just it's mad. Anyway, this is so off topic.
I'm more worried about becoming the kind of bitter old guy who doesn't like new things just cause they're new things. That's more of a fear for me. Like the guy who just like complains about whatever the kids are listening to.
Really? Oh man,
that's a much bigger fear for me.
That is a fear I absolutely don't have, because like I remember in college, I was exposed to the Mahler. I think it's the Mahler quote, "The young are always right," or something like that. And I remember thinking about that. I remember being like, that is kind of true.
Yeah.
Like and it makes sense on an intuitive level in that, like, fresh eyes coming into a situation and fresh thoughts and opinions are kind of, they see situations in a new, and chances are that those opinions will be more correct. So like ever since that day, I've always been like, no, what the younger generation do, I may not understand, but like I'm just going to say that's probably great. Go for it.
Yeah, that's my approach, and that's kind of what I'm doing to get away from that fear.
Yeah.
To deal with that fear.
Bill there sitting there, all those kids. Back in my day, we used to just play Red Dead Redemption 2 for 5 days on end with no sleep and only eating like, drinking like full fat or full sugared Cokes and popcorn. But now everyone's off in VR land, and it's not like the way it was back in my day. These newfangled cyber kids and blah.
Yeah, no, just like music and stuff. I make a bit of an effort to understand what kind of, and it's good for me professionally as well as a teacher to know what people are into, so I can like engage with the music that they're interested in.
But look at like Lil Pump, he's great. Lil Pump is the future,
I don't know Lil Pump. I've gotten quite into hyperpop.
Hyperpop? I don't know what that is.
100 gecs. You should listen to 100 gecs.
100 gecs. Do you know what I've got? Sorry, I'm so sorry, folks. Bill and I, before we recorded, we talked at length about how we haven't actually talked to one another for ages.
Yeah.
This is kind of spilling over into the show. We're just chatting to each other as
friends.
Yeah,
you're just going to listen to our like catch up.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry.
I'm not.
The 100 gecs. I have gotten into a thing called clowncore. Have you heard of clowncore?
I know there's a band by that name.
Yeah, that band. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are insane. Like, and insane in a good way. It is just this absolute, like, kaleidoscope of vibes. And you're like, what is this? And
bizarre polystylism.
Yeah, bizarre polystylism. It is great. And they from what I can hear, like, I don't know enough about the genres that they do to be able to make calls on whether it's good or not. But from what I can hear, like, they're very gifted musicians. And they're very competent in the different styles that they smash together.
Yeah.
And it's just great vibes. Like, there's nothing like, on a Sunday morning putting on the pancakes and listening to a bit of clowncore on Alexa at full blast. But I will check out 100 gecs. That sounds interesting. I'd be interested to see what hyperpop is. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, Axiom's End.
Let's do it.
Axiom's End, the long-awaited review of Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. Links in the show notes to the book if you want to pick it up. As always, there are going to be there's no further content after this review. So if you want to stop now and go read the book and come back, you can do so. You're not going to miss anything. 100%.
And there will be spoilers.
And there will be all of the spoilers. Mm-hmm. So with that announcement out of the way, Axiom's End, Bill. We should do some synopsis. Give us your sort of synopsis of what this is.
So Axiom's End is set in 2007, and it is about the discovery and the reveal of humanity's first contact with an alien life form.
That is a very succinct. How do you say that word, Bill?
Succinct.
Synopsis there. Yeah, it's basically a first contact book. Mm-hmm. So now the main protagonist is a girl called Cora. our kind of like alien that she undergoes first contact with is called Ampersand. There's other aliens, government cover-ups, that sort of jazz. What did you think of the book?
I like liking things.
But
and ultimately I did quite enjoy it, but there were a lot of things that kind of tripped me up on the way.
Yeah, I would say I'm similar. Like, I think, so here, let me just preface this with a little bit of background. So it's very easy, I think, to criticize faceless people. It's a lot less easier. It's a lot less easy to criticize people you kind of had some degree of interpersonal relationships with, to whatever degree. And I met Lindsay very, very, very briefly at PatreCon those years ago. And without going into details, because I don't know if it's public or I don't know if this is a thing that's out in the ether, but she was doing a panel with other creators, and the panel went quite toxic.
Right.
Yeah, it took a nosedive midway through, and I remember sitting in the audience and feeling, really bad for Lindsay and the rest of the people on the stage, and also feeling great admiration for the way they kind of handled the situation, because it could have very easily turned into just an absolute train wreck. But like, I was really impressed with Lindsay's kind of demeanor and her ability to handle this situation. And I went up to her afterwards and I was kind of like, hey, look, I'm really sorry you had to endure that. You were really class. Like, so I like, that's the smallest amount of interpersonal interaction one could have with a person, but I did have that interaction. And so criticizing this book feels weird, because it's like I'm criticizing an actual human being and not just some random person whose face I don't never seen or who I don't know or whatever. So that being said, I found the book just a solid like 3 out of 10. It was very, not 3
that low.
No, like 5 out of 10. It was very middle of the road. And knowing Lindsay and her output, I kind of would have expected a lot more and something that was a lot more interesting. But for me, it was just kind of like, this is kind of just a really well-trodden, she's going down the well-trodden road of first contact books. And there's kind of not really much play in those books. Like, they're always going to trend to go over the same points over and over again, and I think it's really hard to make something unique out of it. So right. I think she set herself up for a bit of a fail in choosing this subject matter. And yeah, for me the whole time I was kind of like, okay, cool, so she's got the first contact, great, let's keep reading and let's see, does she go somewhere new and interesting with this? And that just kind of never happened, and I was a bit like just meh at the end. And I feel bad saying that, because again, like, she's a real person, who I've seen in the flesh. I've seen her in Meat Space, and it's very hard to just say that about someone you see in Meat Space, But yeah. So what was the thing that tripped you up?
So I guess one of the things I didn't like about it was I thought it was trying very hard to make explicit that it was a period piece with cultural references, and that really jarred me, like how much it leaned into that. It felt a little forced. Because, I mean, we get that, like, page 1, don't we? It opens with kind of, like, Cora listening to Avril Lavigne's song, and, like, the name of the song... Fergalicious. Oh, the first piece of music. Later she plays Avril Lavigne on the guitar. There you go. And it's really... I found that too. I was kind of like... It just seemed really strange. And also, the setting of it being a period piece, it was kind of... Maybe this happens a lot in literature, but like I found it really strange that it was set so close to the modern world, and that kind of threw me a little bit, because I was like, I was alive in 2007. This didn't happen, Whereas if it was set in like the 60s, that may as well be a gazillion years ago on a different planet. I don't care, but like she talks a bit about that. I read some quotes from her. I think it was on Goodreads or something, and the reasons for that, I think, were tied up in both her being of a similar age at the time, as I recall, and that being the period when WikiLeaks started being relevant, which is obviously a huge kind of influence on the book. So the fact it was a period piece didn't bother me at all, but I just thought it was kind of overdoing it with cultural references. And maybe it wasn't that she was making the cultural references to make it a period piece. It was just she writes like that. But whatever the reason was, it just kind of felt a bit much.
Yeah,
for my taste.
I mean, this is the thing I've always had a kind of problem with in terms of cultural references. Like in rap, for example, in particular, I'm just kind of like, I get it, I get why that exists, but like they very quickly can become very dated and irrelevant to people. Like I know Fergalicious. I think Fergalicious was a song that was sung by your one from the Black Eyed Peas, correct?
Fergie,
yeah, Fergie. But that's the thing. So like again, at that time, I would have been like, if it's set in 2007, I was 17, 18 at the time. So that's like peak listening to music age, and like gearing up to go to music college. So I would have been quite like stewing in the musical zeitgeist. But like even that kind of sort of passed me by. So when that's put down as a reference, that's great if you get the reference and you're able to like clock the period in your time in your mind. But like if you don't, it just becomes kind of like meaningless. And I get that with like very, very old rap songs. I listen to them, like listen to some Rakim song or whatever, and I'm just like, I understand none of these references. Like this makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I think this book could perhaps suffer from that a little bit if you don't know who Avril Lavigne is or Fergie, which is not like, it's not massively likely, but it's not impossible that you wouldn't know who those people are, you know?
Yeah. Another thing was I thought there was a little bit of unsubtlety in bits of the writing. Like one of the things I highlighted here is when you first meet the CIA agent. When he comes to the house, and the interaction between the agent and her aunt, and the quote is, Luciana looked at him, and Cora wondered if her aunt wasn't avoiding the feds, but him specifically. And like that was kind of already clear. It didn't need to be emphasized in that way, I felt.
Yeah. And would that be a thing that just it's a YA thing to do?
I know this isn't YA though.
Ah, man, is it not YA? I mean,
no, I wouldn't call it YA.
Jeez, I would have called it maybe closer to the older end of the YA spectrum, but like, I don't know. Maybe I have a poor grasp of what YA is.
Are you allowed aliens in YA?
But no one slept with an alien.
Well, like, kinda did.
No, they didn't kinda at all. There was no, like, it was just they had a very close, friendly bond. It
is absolutely baiting for fan fiction.
Oh, but look at, man, like, fan fiction will occur even if no baiting is occurring. Like, I know
that, but it is explicitly, absolutely baiting fan fiction.
Yeah, sure.
100%.
Yeah, okay.
100%.
I guess.
And she herself has kind of acknowledged and nodded towards that.
Oh, okay. Well, I was about to say, I guess if you were to replace ampersand with a human, then yeah, that would be pretty. I guess maybe because I'm looking as an alien, just like love
and
them.
they do share a bed. At the end,
they do share a bed, but like, I mean, geez, I shared a bed with a dog before. That doesn't mean that like love occurred.
Yeah, but it didn't trick you into it. Well, not trick you, but it didn't like give you a dog marriage to save your life.
A dog marriage? I mean, is that title of the show?
I think Banknotes with Antlers should be the title of the show.
Oh yeah, no, Banknotes with Antlers. Actually, yeah, you're dead right. Banknotes with Antlers. So see how long we keep the show going. Yeah, okay, no, I take that back. Yeah, there you can definitely read sexual overtones, but like, just to be clear, like, no explicit sex scene occurred between the alien.
No literal.
Yeah, it's just it's baiting for it. You're right.
I want to say that overall I did enjoy this. This is the time I'm airing criticisms because that's where we are in the conversation. Some of the stuff in it began to make sense later on, but as I was reading it, I was like, why are they acting in this way? Why are these people making these decisions? And even then, some of it didn't even do that. Like, when there's the break-in near the beginning, mm-hmm. and she thinks, oh god, the alien has stolen the hard drive to try and track down my father. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's a bonkers. That's a completely ridiculous thing to come to. Why would an alien steal a heart? How would they? What is the interface there that they would understand that concept? And I know she was like scared and all that, so, and you know, unreliable narration and everything, but it's just kind of put there, and it's never questioned further in the text that that might have been a absurd conclusion to come to. She herself never goes, "What was I thinking? That was ridiculous," or that was just so weird to me. And I actually I stopped reading it for a while at that point because I was like, "What is this about? That's ridiculous." And there was stuff like, there was some really good stuff about the kind of linguistics, and you know, there's no. The linguistics isn't set up well to deal with non-human languages, and the IPA chart is specifically about the human vocal tract, as yourself and Alex covered. But then there's the thing that the algorithm they have for decoding human languages will take the same amount of time to understand English as to understand all computer systems, as though they're comparable tasks. That really took me out of it.
Yeah, I can't say it took me out of it, but well, the thing that with the linguistic stuff, the thing that took me out of it was the explanation of the IPA chart, and I was like, okay, like I realize I think most people would not know that such a chart exists, and that we kind of have like we've catalogued all human sounds. I think, you know, you pull up some random on the street to be like, wow, cool, that exists. That's hella information there. But for me, obviously, I was looking at being all like, oh God, here comes IPA exposition. And I was like, ugh. And there was another moment actually where I thought it was kind of like, this is going to sound too mean, and I don't mean it as mean at all. So apologies to Lindsay if you're listening. Hi, Lindsay. It felt at places like with the IPA chart, and when they talked about the great filters, they had like philosophy corner for a little bit, the two of them. It kind of felt a little bit like she had either watched some sort of Vsauce video and was like, oh, that's cool, or did a bit of Googling around for like, you know, low-hanging fruit philosophy points or whatever. And it felt like that just got put into the book then, you know, and that kind of really threw me as well. It's kind of like, oh, someone's watched or a Kurzgesagt video. Someone's watched a Kurzgesagt video on the philosophy of like aliens or whatever, and that's got put into the book, and that really took me out of it. And then as well, the IPA chart, I was just like, I'm not here to have the IPA chart explained to me. Like, I know what's going on. It's cool.
Yeah, that kind of exposition doesn't bother me all that much in books, and because I know you kind of had similar issues with The Martian, didn't you? You felt it was kind of overly expository at times, and I didn't mind that at all. The
problem with The Martian was that it was literal calculations. That was the problem with The Martian. Like, it was literally like he was sitting there going, so if I have 50 grams of potato seeds, and I have 200 kilograms of Martian soil with an average precipitation rate of it, I'm just like, why do we don't need to know this? Like, we don't need to know this. Like, stop calculating in front of us. Like, hide your work, Andy Weir. God damn it.
It didn't bother me at all.
It bothered me way less in the movie, but in the book, it really bothered me. Like, there's just something very jarring about seeing a heap of numbers everywhere. And just like, ugh. It's a maths textbook. I wasn't prepared for this. Stop it. Go away. The philosophy stuff felt like that. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's like, with the IPA stuff and with the philosophy stuff, it felt like there was a moment of kind of like, I'm going to drop some hard knowledge on you here. Like, I'm going to make you think about the world. We have catalogued all the human sounds onto a chart. Did you know that, reader? And it can only deal with human sounds and nothing after that. And you're like, it's just kind of lame. Like, once you don't get the mind blow from it, it's kind of lame. And the same with the thing, like, have you ever heard about a thing called the great filter? And it's like, yes, I've watched many YouTube videos about this. Like, it doesn't have that impact hearing about it, you know.
My thing about that is I always thought the Fermi paradox and the great filter was just kind of a silly idea. Like,
really?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous.
Well, you think both are ridiculous?
Well, I mean, the great filter is only really relevant to the Fermi paradox, I guess, and like, I don't know, it's there's so many assumptions there, many totally unwarranted assumptions, like naturally every species that involves intelligence is going to just colonize everywhere. Well, why would they? Maybe their goals are totally different. And maybe we just, we can't see them, or we're not looking in the right way to see them. Maybe they are there and we're just not seeing what they are.
Yeah.
I thought it was a nonsense argument.
Yeah, but then
that's in no way. I'm not saying that's the fault of the book. That's in no way the fault of that. Is a thing that exists out there and is made reference to in the book.
Right, but that's the problem when that thing, like, if I go, I don't have the feelings that you have towards Fermi paradox and the Great Filter. But like, if I did, and then I heard this like super intelligence begin talking about it as if it's like, kind of, he's dropping the knowledge, then it just feels really weird. Because you'd expect the super intelligence, to take your example, to turn around and be like, you humans think of the Fermi paradox and the Great Barrier, but what actually occurs is, majority of beings are non-corporeal and they don't covet or whatever, something like that.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that at all, because one of the things about what we see in the book is that the superorganism, this alien culture, is fallible and it has its own propaganda. So they would totally be just as susceptible to bad ideas like that. I don't think the existence of a bad idea in an alien culture is any kind of reflection at all on the literature.
No. But my problem is the regurgitating of our bad ideas through an alien's mouth. Like, they should have their own bad ideas. Do you know what I mean? It just seems so weird that the alien went and watched the Kurzgesagt video on the Great Filter and then told Cora about it.
But, dude, that's not the only person who's ever discussed this idea.
No, I'm just using Kurzgesagt as an example. But sorry, I'm using that as an example of, like, this is a common thing that's talked about in, like, internet geekdom, So it's like the alien went and looked at internet geekdom videos, podcasts, etc., and then regurgitated it to Cora, and it just feels really weak because, again, they're meant to be different from us, and I don't know, I'd expect I don't know, I kind of felt like I wanted a discussion about, like, an alien take on this issue of the Great Filter, for example, not just like he explains to us what we think about the universe. Do you know what I mean?
Not really. I don't really feel that at all.
But do you follow what I'm saying, though?
Only kind of.
I'll clarify it in the Reddit, folks. Oh God. Okay. What other points?
I mean, I haven't read a lot of First Contact novels, and I enjoyed it, and I thought there was interesting stuff about that and the difficulties of communicating and the impossibilities that exist. I thought a lot of that was kind of undercut by the baiting of the kind of erotic or romance elements, which again is just like, that's something I'm just not interested in media in general at all. Romance stories, largely because so many of them are so shoehorned into things where they're not relevant. Here it kind of makes sense because it's about the communication, but I think it does undercut the idea that they're very alien.
Sure.
It weakens that thread. I'm a bad person to make the judgment, I suppose.
You're not in it for the what's her face, Edward, and what's her face from Twilight? Bella. Not in it for the Edward and Bella. No.
I am not.
I am not even slightly. I have one or two points. Actually, no. In fact, actually, we discussed one of the points was YouTube philosophy, and that was the whole thing about the aliens espousing our philosophy. We covered that. And we kind of the thing that got me was her writing style a little bit. Like, maybe people in California speak differently than I do, because I think she's a California native, Lindsay is, but like a lot of the words she used like were not how I use words, and I found it really distracting. That's not a criticism, because, like, different dialects exist, etc. The example here I have is
everyone has their own dialect, and they're all valid except Californians.
Except Californians, yeah, exactly. But, like, I mean, it is an interesting point to bring up, like, when you're reading an English book, like a piece of English prose, but the English in it is something inscrutable to you. I think that's really fascinating when that happens.
Like what?
Well, the example is, now I could be wrong about this, but she kept using the term "at length." in her prose. And one, I think she overuses like structures. Like she overuses the same sentence structure over and over again. And I was looking for more variety and stuff. Like I shouldn't be able to pick out patterns in your writing when listening or when reading. And I found that she did that. But the at length crack, she'd say stuff like at length ampersand stopped or whatever. And that happened so often. I was like, but that's not what I think at length means. Like at length means is to go on. So you'd say like he rambled at length. He went on rambling. But like the idea of like what she means to say is after a long time.
Right.
Ampersand stop. And now maybe that's how Californians use the phrase at length. But like I don't use it like that at all. I've never heard anyone use that phrase at length, and it was one of her kind of like most used phrases, most used clauses. She was constantly saying at length someone did a thing that actually occurs instantaneously and isn't a durative event. And it just completely snapped me out of it. At length, like it's just, that's not what that means. So Californians in the chat, do you use it like that? Do you say at length I stopped?
I don't remember any things of that. There's like, at length he says, as in after a period of waiting, he said.
But that's also weird though, because it's not after...
That's not weird to me.
That's not weird to you. That's interesting. So I ran this by Zidnaf actually, where I was chatting to him, and he immediately, as I began talking about it, he immediately was like, "That's weird. I that's not how I would use that phrase at all." That's mad, Bill. That is mad, because I've literally never used that phrase like that ever in my life.
I don't know that I've used it that way, but its meaning is completely clear to me.
Oh no, sure. Its meaning,
and it doesn't strike me as curious.
Its meaning is clear to me, but it strikes me as curious. Like every time she said it, I had to stop and be like, "Oh, she means it like that." Like I had to do a double take, and it was very distracting to me. Now maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just me. Well, maybe it's just me and Zidnaf, but it was a very strange event. And then the last point I have is just a general musing on, can one write a first contact book that is truly unique? Because from my perspective, after having read that book ages ago, the book that Arrival is based on, the movie,
the Ted Chiang one, yeah,
exactly, which is basically a first contact book. And we read this book, another first contact book, and like it feels to me that there's always going to be some discussion of communication, and then some imparting of deep philosophy from one to the other, and that's basically the tropes of this first contact thing. And I as I was reading, I was kind of like, how on earth would one write first contact in a truly unique way? And for the life of me, I can't think of it. Like it feels like a genre or a subgenre of story that's just very hemmed in, do you know?
Yeah.
There doesn't seem like there's a whole lot you can do with it.
It would either have to be like really weird, in which case it stops having the same kind of relevance and resonance.
Yeah.
Like just like a totally alien thing. Like does Annihilation count as first contact? I can't remember whether that's explicitly alien, but
I don't know what Annihilation is. That's a Netflix movie, is it?
Yeah. I haven't read the book, but it's based on a book.
Okay, I don't know anything about Annihilation.
It's weird.
Oh, is it weird?
It's really weird. Yeah, it's cool. I enjoyed it a lot. The film, but it gets kind of trippy.
In summation on this, I think this is, I mean, like, look, this is their first book. I would give my left arm, and my right arm, and both my legs, possibly my head, I would give everything to be able to write a book at all. So like props to Lindsay for writing a book that is not dribble. And in the infamous sphere of YouTuber writes book, this is head and shoulders above literally everything that has ever been written by a YouTuber. Like Lindsay is an intelligent person, and this is a good book. I just found that I think she with the subject matter she chose, she just pinned herself in, and unless she's going somewhere really exploratory in the next couple of books, I don't really see how she can craft a unique story. So my main criticism is the selection of the genre, basically, I think was not brilliant. And I think with time, perhaps her writing will become a little bit more diverse in terms of like prose, because I found her writing to be a bit kind of like recycled and repetitive. But it's not a bad book. It's not a bad book at all. It's a tough one to choose for first book. First contact for first book seems like I wouldn't go down that road if that were me. What are your closing thoughts?
I think ultimately I did enjoy it. There were, as I said, there were a lot of struggles, and I have criticisms of it. It's not a genre I've read a lot of, this like kind of specific first contact thing. Yeah. I overall I enjoyed it with caveats.
Too much
it doesn't need so much by way of cultural reference. I don't think that added a lot. Like there was a 3-page digression about Star Wars, which I think that took me out of it the way the philosophy took you out of it.
There was a 3-page digression about Star Wars?
Yeah, where she locked herself in the closet and was imagining she was Princess Leia.
Man, I completely missed that. What?
Yeah.
Wow. That doesn't sound like it was necessary.
That, as I said, that really took me out of it. I was reading it going, what is this about? That was the worst offender in the cultural references things. But I'm there is enough of an interesting setup and setting that I'm curious to see what happens in the rest of the series.
I am too. And I think, really the criticism should be applied once the trilogy is completed as a whole.
Yeah.
Because we're judging part one. It's very, the way it finishes, it very intentionally is part of a longer series. Like, this is not standalone at all.
I think it could work by itself.
Oh, man.
I think you could leave it there.
I mean, Jesus, she literally cut it off mid-conversation. It was very like there's more coming here, pal. Don't worry about it. That last sentence, I think the last sentence was like, "But I am not human" or whatever, which is a cool last sentence to end on.
Yeah.
But it was one where I was kind of like, wait, so does that mean that like you were going to go against everything that was just said in the previous paragraph, or you're going to go with it? What do you mean I am not human here? It feels like it's basically a question that's begging to be resolved in the next ones. But I agree. I think there's a good enough start to it that I'd be interested in reading the rest of them. And it was also, credit to Lindsay as well, it was also dead easy to read. Like, this wasn't China Medieval, where you kind of need to get out the dictionary and take it a page at a time. This was a fun book to just...
Comprehensible prose.
Comprehensible prose. You could do it while doing... I could listen to it while doing other stuff and not have to be intently focused on it, which is a relief sometimes. Anyway, Axiom's End, I give about 5 out of 10. First Contact is hard. That's my TLDR. Now, next book in the series, Bill.
Edgar.
We said Broken Earth Part 2, and I do really want to read Broken Earth Part 2. I do really want to read that, but a thought occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, would you be interested in this? Again, under our sort of thing about like we want to read something that's very world building or conlanging centric. You've mentioned before about the Mars trilogy, and you've mentioned a lot about how they discuss things like the constitution of Mars, lots of stuff like that. I've never read the Mars trilogy, so I was like, maybe we could you could reread and I could read the first book of the Mars trilogy. Is that a good idea? Does that fit our gamut?
I can't remember how much happens in the first book.
Oh dear, that bodes well.
I haven't read it in several years. I should be able to see it from here. Where have they gone?
Someone stole the Mars trilogy.
I could see green Mars and I can see blue Mars, but I cannot see red Mars. But sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
So let's set that for the not next month, but the month after. We'll read. What's the author? Stanley Robinson.
Kim Stanley Robinson.
Links in the show notes. It's Kim Stanley Robinson's the Mars series. Red Mars, you said?
Red Mars is the first book, yeah.
So we'll read book 1. People have a go at that too, and we'll review it in 2 months' time. Okay, Billiam.
Excellent.
It's now 2.5 hours. A short show, this is not. Man, again, I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you again. I know softiness, but
that's all right.
I really enjoy our getting together, and now it's going to be a solid monthly basis, and it's great. So I missed the chats over the past 2 months, and looking forward to next month.
Likewise, bro.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for supporting the show over on Patreon, particularly when I'm late with projects and you continue to support. That is just so awesome. Yeah, and we'll see you all in Reddit and next month. Until next time,
Edgar out.